some of you guys already know us, I think. You haven't met us yet. You haven't met us yet. So give a short introduction. I'll be hosting this panel. My name is Balkan. I'm an internationally published best-selling author, best known for stories like Peter and Pan, Here Be Dragons, The Observatory, and stuff like that. And we also have a couple of other great authors here with us, starting with Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan, but on my books you will see my pen name being more conclave. I write young adult fantasy. Like Music Academy, which is Greek mythology that comes to life on a school, at school. Then we also have a story with the witch in the leading role. And next to writing, I write in Dutch, so I don't have English books yet. For the English books, you have to go to the and next to writing, I'm also the person behind het schrijverscollectief, het Writers Collective, which is basically a group full by and for authors of Belgian origin and the Netherlands too. And our main focus is gathering together not only the people but also the funds to go to smaller but also bigger events in order to make it a bit more, easier to
make it accessible to more authors.
Indeed.
It's not easy.
No, some goods like facts are very expensive, so that's what I do.
Matthias?
Well, I'm Matthias Maho. I write dark fantasy, and I specialize in working with animals in my stories. Don't have to be real animals. I work with cryptids. And I do tend to give my own swing to those animals. Besides that, I make book trailers for other authors, which are apparently, and recently I started making songs as well.
For her.
For her book. Besides that, I have a plant book initiative, in which I plant a tree for every 5 books I sell. That's it.
I'm Petra Doom. I'm a fantasy author, mainly urban fantasy. So I write at the cross-section of reality and fantasy, so to speak. My most famous series is Overstakers, and I'm currently working on Children of Orpheus. So I like to give a spin to old mythological stories and make them new in a way. Apart from that, I work as an editor and I teach creative writing.
So a lot of talent here, and with a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different stories, and you have different worlds with different kinds of characters involved. So, what is the biggest challenge in making a non-human character appealing to readers?
I think the trick is making them at the same time different enough, but also give them human traits. Like I have in my Music Academy stories, I have a small dragon that is a dragon in all typical forms that a dragon can be. But she loves baking cookies and drinking tea, which is easier said than done because she still has her dragon claws. So
We need stumps.
Yeah.
Stumps are overrated.
Yeah, she has a tail for that, to whip up, open the oven and stuff like that. So I think that's my kind of, because in Metapolis Revolts, which is my story with my witch as the center character, I, for example, have a gargoyle who is, again, the typical gargoyle who is a statue in the office of my character that represents that. And he stands like with his palm like this. And if you put a coin in his palm, he comes to life, and he is actually the servant of that. But he drives the car because he is mostly the chauffeur of that. So and for me that works. And I also notice that when readers read my stories, they like those characters because they are different, but still like
Recognizable.
Yeah, familiar to and linkable to who they are or people they know. So
analogies. I think you have another viewpoint.
Yeah, well, I tend to use the stuff people know about animals. I do have a workshop. I do teach people, writers, about working with animals in stories. What I tend to do is, for example, when a dog is happy, you can see it by its tail. But if a cat moves its tail, get away. So what I tend to do is, if you work with a character, a non-human character that represents a dog, I use dog-like traits for that character. The same with a cat. If I work with a character that resembles a dragon but isn't a dragon, then I might make it a bit more different, because I let him act like a dragon, but he is self-aware
That isn't right.
that he isn't a dragon.
Just to make it clear for everybody, Matthias writes has both regular animals and more cryptids, more
cryptids,
animals
demons.
that we multiply.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, but I do tend to
Crossover, you know.
Yes, but I do tend to make my mythical animals resemble real-life animals to make it easier for the reader. If you use fictional animals and you make things up out of nowhere, it's harder for a reader to understand and stays involved in the story. So
It's also harder for the writer, because when you have like an exact picture in your head, like this is how my made-up character looks like, you have to put it in words so that the reader, like for at least 80%, has the same picture,
Yes,
sort of.
exactly.
So yeah, it works both ways.
exactly that. So that's how I do it. Yeah.
I write a lot of humanoid, not human characters, and I think the challenge there is to take care you don't write a human in cosplay, so to speak. It's easy to write flashy stuff. For example, if I wrote Ifrit in my main series, he looks very human-like. Only when he's really angry or very emotional, you can see the veins of fire and the fire in his eyes popping up. But that's easy, that's the visuals. And I think the most important thing for me, I write very character-driven, also very emotion-driven. And I think that's the big thing to make a character appealing, is to make the reader feel the emotions of the character. And if you want to write a non-human character, you have to make sure the emotion is recognizable, but you can change up the motivation. So, for example, revenge is a very recognizable emotion, but if you give a character a very unhuman-like motivation for this revenge, then you immediately have something that's recognizable at one side, but very interesting at the other side. For example, the Ifrit in my story is very sensitive to feeling caged. It's of course a little play on the jinn-like creatures who are often caged in objects like lamps and so forth. But in the story it has a very different background. But I play around with that in very unusual situations. For example, if someone comes on to him romantically, he will like that one time, but if you do it 3 or 4 times, he starts to feel caged and he will react very different than a normal human being would do it. So that's little situations where you can tweak the motivation, but make the emotion recognizable.
Yes, so as we can tell, we have a lot of different viewpoints here immediately. Because there's a lot of different ways you can write this stuff. There's no right or wrong way to write this. It's you have to go by your own feeling.
What works for you doesn't work for someone else.
Yeah.
And I always say, when you first write a story, as an aspiring writer or even as a hobbyist, you always write first for yourself. You write a story that you want to read. And only after that, you write for other people. And in that way, you can't do nothing wrong. You can't do anything wrong. Well, yeah, but mostly, you get, especially the first draft, you can't do anything wrong in that. Even loose, we let the spelling loose, just like facts and research and stuff like that. But yeah, research is key. That's something we want to do.
In regards to research, on to the next question.
Nice segue.
When it comes to creating a non-human character, what do you do first? Do you focus on the culture of it, the biology of it, or even like you said, the psychology of it? And which of these elements do you think is most important to believability of the character. I told you guys it wouldn't be easy. I mean,
Well, actually, for me, it's not so difficult. I start because I often take creatures that are known in mythology. I start with the known stories, and then I start to dig.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what it's known, but why is it like that? Well, what's the story behind it? So I start, I think, partially with history. Who are these creatures? Why did they came to be like this? And then I start to add, but this is a specific person. One Ifrit is not all the Ifrits. One water nymph is not every water nymph. So what's his or her personal backstory? And then I start to intertwine those two. As people do, we have a background that defines us partly, but we're individuals too. So I try to make the psychological factor work with the specific and racial, if I may call it that, background of the character as a whole.
I work a bit the same because I also start like with the mythology behind the creature because I love mythology. But then I start to like highlight some aspects of it, and I'm going to like turn that around. Like for example, my dragon character. Dragons are no borders, and mostly it's a treasure with gold, diamonds, stuff like that. And I was like, okay, but what if I have a dragon that likes to collect matching kitchen aprons and like oven gloves, oven mitts, and even teacups and stuff like that. And what if, you know, dragons are like dangerous and really like stoic and sometimes even very angry creatures? What if I make a happy-go-lucky dragon?
so I think before we go to Matthias, that it's very clear that you guys take something that already exists and look for different ways and a new perspective.
Yeah.
You want a new perspective, one that already exists, or to explain facets of that creature that already has a backstory. So, that's it.
Yeah, I do things a bit more differently because I take what is known from cryptids. Let's say, for example, the Loch Ness Monster. So I know what it is, I know how it looks, and then I completely start over. So I see let's say it's a dinosaur, to make it simple. It's a plesiosaur. Alright, it lives in water. So what does it need to eat? It needs to eat fish, that's logic. If it needs to eat something else, it has to go outside of the water. If it has to go outside of the water, how will it do that? Does it have lungs? Can it hold its breath above the water? So I tend to take a bit more a scientific biological route, because I work more with the animal aspect of my characters, not so less the humanoid kind, but more animal-like. So I have a plan that I use containing environment, food, special abilities, and even as far as digestive system. Because it all depends on how will I use the creature. Will it be playing a main role? Will it be sidetracked? Or will it just be mentioned in the story? And how deeper it goes, just the more information I need.
But that's also something that a lot of people don't know. As a writer, you know way more about your characters than what the readers know, because not everything you know as a writer you can put in your book.
Yes, exactly.
And there's also a bit of a trap in there in the essence of world building.
Yes,
A lot
building
of
disease.
people start world building to write a story, but they never stop world building. They keep on expanding on details and details and details. And you have to know where the line is, where to stop.
Otherwise, you're writing that for Wikipedia.
That's
It's
why
fun,
In Matthias' case, for example, you have your field guide.
I have my field guide. So that's
so
why
that's useful.
that's exactly why I work with my steps, my plan, because it gives me somewhere to start, but it also gives me a place to end. Because I do indeed tend to overthink about how many stomachs does one creature need. It's fun. I have an animal as big as God knows what.
As big as yourself.
Bus last time?
Plus the
Yeah,
biggest
that's
one.
a
Frank was the size of a bus.
But he does have a really big digestive system with multiple stomachs, because it is a necessity for him to go around. He needs his energy, and that goes as far as me going to the zoo with a note and a pen, sitting down and observing multiple animals. So that goes really far, but that's just my thing. Okay, don't take an example from me. That's just a thing. And
Not all of us are good examples.
yeah, exactly. But my research led me to a field guide that will be published later on next year, containing all the information that I didn't use in my story, but is like a plus to anyone who's reading the story.
It's a fun extra.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So let's go on to the next question. You find it useful to get inspiration from real animals, myths, or completely original sources when developing these Quillscene characters? And if so, how? Like we've already touched upon this, but how would you go about this? Like in your case, you use a lot of animals. You guys work with a lot of myths, but how are some other ways that you can go about this?
Just stick two animals to each other and they work.
Yeah, talk.
Yeah, talk. But it
Don't use a bladder for that, please.
yeah, you can only use that once, and afterwards you have to find the blood. No, I do have some animals that only barely touch the surface, considering the information that I got. Some urban legends that only mention something. So then my inspiration just got out of hand. But what I did, considering animals, I took 2 or 3 animals, I combined them where necessary, and then I started thinking, okay, but again, the environment, what kind of animal could use that? For example, a mermaid. Where does the flesh turn white and where does it stay red?
I almost had the answer.
Yeah.
The answer to that question once.
Yeah, okay. Salmon is also pink.
Yeah. We're not going to go deeper into the surf and turf.
Okay, I'm sorry. But it's combining and then looking for the best or worst for both animals for me.
Okay.
For me, it's like the research again, because with mythology you have a lot of written data basically. But the thing with mythology and folklore in its own, there are a lot of different versions of each myth, and then you can basically decide which version do I need for my story, or can I combine the different facts that I know in those different versions to one. Or why do they think that? And then you can start turning. For example, in my Music Academy books, you have the muses, but you also have the sirens, or my big bad guys, basically. But most people, when they hear the word siren, they think of the bad mermaid. Yeah, that too. But the one with the hypnotizing voice that sings sailors to their doom. However, when you deep dive Greek mythology, like the original one, sirens are actually basically humanoid, harpy-like bird creatures.
Yeah, so in short, actually, you can pick and choose whatever you want.
Yeah, basically.
I would say another way into this is start with what you know and what you love. So, for example, I'm a big music lover, and that was actually the source for my project. I did circle back to mythology eventually, but I started with the idea: what if magic was music? That was the first idea, the first spark, and that it does exist, the idea, of course. There are spells who are sung. If you think of the iconic image of the witches around the cauldron, they're often singing their spells too. Music, music can be enchanting, the fey melody that leads someone to somewhere. But that was the core idea. What if music was magical? And then I started thinking, how could this be? And then you can make practically anything into a kind of creature. So for this case, I made this gift hereditary. So it started with 6 people who each found a piece of the body of a mythological bard Orpheus. But from that point, they are kind of different creatures. They weren't human anymore. So that's a way you can start. You can create your own non-human creatures. Start with something you find intriguing, something you know well, and infuse human and negative mythological creature.
If I can add something to that, so like Petra said, you can start from what you know yourself. But what also is interesting is talk to people around you and ask them, what do you think of when you hear the name dragon or the name nymph or whatever, because then you can get like a bit of a view, like what your normal reader already knows, and you can use that as a base, as a building. You know?
Or not at all.
Or not at all, yeah. Or you can go 180 completely and just,
Okay, that's interesting. What strategies do you use to keep non-human characters consistent throughout the story? So how do you prevent that they don't become too human?
Emotional arc, in my case. I try to give them a backstory, a bit like Petra did with the psychology behind everything. Like, for example, my happy-go-lucky dragon is very happy-go-lucky, but why is she happy-go-lucky? And that is something that I got a chance to like discover and well explore for myself during one of our projects, a short story that I wrote. And then I realized the reason why she's so happy-go-lucky is because she has a lot of trauma. And again, that's our human emotions. But then I try to add like the dragon side of it in it. Again, like the hoarding stuff and stuff like that. So Yura's collection became bigger as the trauma grew, and it's her thing of therapy, and she likes making new friends and drinking tea and sharing stories, but she doesn't like to talk about her past.
Also, when I say consistency can be as a character, but also in its physical attributes. For example, we talked about the size, that the finger of the dragon.
Yes.
Dragon. It's the size of a bus.
Yeah.
How can you ensure that it stays that size throughout the entire story?
Well, I tend to do that by, measuring the that sounds so dirty. So it's measuring the finger with other things. But no,
I
it's
still have the picture somewhere with you in your hands.
when you're expanding the story, and my Ukrit, my demon, uses his hand. There's a clear difference in between the other characters and Ukrit's hand, because that's all there is at some point. There's no Ukrit, there's no total being, it's always a part of Ukrit that's in the picture. I wouldn't say it's a consistency that the finger is always like a bus, but it's a consistency that he's always bigger than everyone.
Not bigger, ginormous.
Ginormous. But besides that, because I work a lot with animal-like creatures, I sneak in animal-like behavior. Like Gen, well, let's keep Ukrit as an example. He is and will always be a demon who has, bloodlust, love, and especially mermaids. So
Was a very traumatic scene.
whenever I feel like my characters are getting too human, I just give them, not random of course, it has to be a build-up, but I let them have that sneak peek of, oh right, but you're still just an animal. My soul animals in my story have a conscious, they can talk, they understand things, but at the end of the day, if one of them sees a ball rolling by, she will still go after that ball and catch it. And I use that not only for consistency in that they're animals, but also to break a scene down when it gets too emotional. When it's too heavy, when there's a big loss, something like that can be easily used just to lighten up the mood just a bit. Like, okay, we're still all sad, but oh my god, she fell over her own tail again trying to get that rat from under the couch. And it helps to move on, or to, because that's what it is in real life too. When you're sad, the dog will come sit on your lap and try to conform you, and that's what I try to do. So it's an anthropomorphism, but it's also an animal being an animal.
I think for me, a big part of this is kind of instinctual. So I'm kind of a method writer. If I'm writing a character, I try to crawl into the character and really feel the character, so it has to feel logical. But I've noticed over the years that I tend to do two things, broadly speaking. that I can give to you as practical tips, and that's try to tie the big motivation of your Inhuman character to something that's inherently Inhuman. And on the other hand, give them a little thing, a little quirk, a little something that's recognizable and clearly Inhuman. For example, I have one character, she's a side character, she's a Rusalka, so that's an East European kind of mermaid. And she's unconsciously really attractive, and if she starts to feel a bit too good about herself, she starts really to glow and suck all the attention to her. But that's not who she wants to be. She's a therapist. So every day she goes to work, she very consciously dresses down, very inconspicuously playing, and she makes every day an effort not to look too good, too appealing, too on the forefront. So for her, that's something that every time comes back, the way she tries to dull herself, really. So it's a little thing. I don't put the attention on it every page, but I repeat this in little things. An effort, for example, is a fire creature. I started to think, how can I make this visible in really little things? And you have to think it through. If something is, if there's fire, there's smoke, and you will smell it. So he has a really subtle smell. If he passes you by, you think, oh, is there something of incense in the air? Or is there an open fire nearby? So that's a little thing. And if you take it through to the little things, you can sprinkle them in. They're not on the forefront, but your reader will pick them up subconsciously, and they will remember, this character isn't human. So that's my
Well, speaking of tips,
There
my
was this
final
last
question.
Sorry.
Yeah, do you have another one in you? Because I was going to ask you guys if you had a final tip for our audience here.
Research.
Yeah.
It's the best I can do because that's what I do. I do a lot of research, but again, pick a starting point, pick an end point during your research. Because another example, if I write about a rabbit who's scared, a rabbit will always put its ears up and look, listen for danger. But if you keep repeating that, you will lose a reader. A rabbit can do other stuff. It can stomp with its back feet, it can straighten up its body, but that's it. Don't go too far into it. So if I can give you one tip considering the research of it all, pick a starting point and pick an end point. And that's it. Don't go too far into it.
And a good tip that maybe kind of leads to that, I love research. I call it rabbit holes because I'm researching hairstyles for a certain character, and then I stumble into clothing styles, and then I stumble into color and the meaning behind every color in that culture. Those are my rabbit holes. It's also my background as a journalist that I like research a lot. So the thing I do to limit myself so that I don't keep researching and keep doing so is that I always try to research just enough so I can finish the scene that I'm working on. And if I later need more information for another scene, then I allow myself to expand a bit on that research, but again, enough so I can write that scene.
Anything else to add, Brenda? It was great to hear you.
I do have one more, and that's dialogues are a great way
Yes.
to develop an Inhuman character. How do they speak? Do they speak very formally? Do they have other ways of presenting things? Also body language, big one. Do they tend to stand very close? Do they make certain hand gestures? I have one character who is really still but uses his head a lot because that's part of his species, so you can see it the way he tilts his head, that's I'm offended or I'm glad, so that are little things that again come back but make it, dialogues are inherently a very good way to show your characters because they're very active at that point, so their Inhuman characteristics should be visible.
Absolutely. One thing I can add to this, a dialogue doesn't have to be speech.
Exactly.
It can be true, especially with Inhuman characters. So, okay, thank you guys for your time. Thank you all for listening. If you have any more questions, will be at our booth at G67.
Yeah.
G67.
In the
And,
retail.
Basically the main
From-
hall all the way across.
And what as well, one hall will be at the booth of the Silver Sport.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
It's, uh,
33.
no, it's next to the big giant bird.
Yeah.
So, thank you all, and hope you learned something. Oh, and our booth, G67. So we're in the corner, so if you go straight ahead to find us.
Yeah, straight.